In this new video, we are going to show you everything in connection with data import and also exporting FNC charts. Importing data, that means that we will show you how you can programmatically add series and values to these series in the FNC chart, how you can also use CSV files that contain information and show or visualize this information from CSV files on a chart, and the same applies to a JSON file. We will also show you how you can use the FNC chart virtual mode. That means that the chart will request or get the data to visualize dynamically while the application is running. And we will also show you how you can export what you have visualized on the FNC chart as either a PDF file or an SVG file. Both are resolution independent file formats, so you can show the chart in its highest possible resolution on whatever device you are using. FNC means, of course, that you can use these solutions in VCL Windows applications, FireMonkey cross-platform application, and you can also run it in the web via the Web Core framework. And so everything we'll show you in this demo is applicable to a VCL application, a FireMonkey application, or a TMS Web Core web client application. And that means that these solutions can run on the Windows operating system, but also macOS, iOS, Android, Linux, and on all operating systems via the web. So let's dive in our Delphi IDE and let's have a look at the TMS FNC chart demo that demonstrates importing data and exporting that to a PDF and an SVG file. So here we are in the Delphi 13 IDE with our demo opened, and this is our FNC chart demo that shows you how you can import data into our FNC chart and how you can export the generated chart as a PDF or an SVG file. Full source code of this demo is also available for you, and you can play with it as such yourself. You find the download link to this demo here below this video. So let's focus on the functionality of our demo. First action we have is loading the FNC chart from collections. And so that means that we have used two dynamic arrays that we fill with some random data, and then we use the functions of the FNC chart to add series and to fill the points of this series to make up a chart. Next, we are going to show you how you can load data that is in a CSV file and load it and visualize it as a chart, and the same applies for a JSON file. We'll also show you with this function here the virtual mode of the chart. Virtual mode, that means that the chart will ask on demand, when it is rendering, values that need to be rendered and visualized as a chart, and so that is happening from here. And finally, we'll also show you how you can export the generated chart both as a PDF and an SVG file. But let's first have a look at the implementation of filling the chart data programmatically, and that from a collection, in this case from dynamic arrays. So what is happening here? First step is building up the content of these dynamic arrays, and that is happening in the build collection data function. And here we can see that we have three dynamic arrays, one for the x-axis labels, and then we will have two series that represent the revenue per month and the target per month. And so we set the fixed length for these dynamic arrays, and then we fill up the data for the dynamic arrays. First of all, we set the x-axis label values. This is a string array with the name of the months that we use for that. And then here for revenue and target, we set random values just for the sake of this demo, and the random generated values are stored in this dynamic array of floating point numbers. If we go back to the the next steps in this collection demo, next step is configuration of the chart. Here we have bundled several standard configurations like where the legend is positioned, where the x-axis and y-axis text is positioned, title of the chart, and so on. So these general settings are bundled here in the configure chart method. And then the next step is to actually add the series and add the points to the series that we have added to the chart. And for that, we use begin update, end update, so that the FNC chart is not rendering while we are doing this operation. And the add series implementation, you can find it here. So what is actually happening? You can see that here a series is added to the FNC chart series collection. The legend text of this series is set, and the Y range is set to AR, 0 based. That means that we do auto ranging, but the auto ranging will take in account the range of the data that is set for multiple series in this case. And then the next step is to load all the points of this specific series. We load or we set both the x-axis value and also the y-axis value, and we do that via series.addPoint, the y-axis value and the label for the x-axis. And there is not much more than this. Let's run this demo and let's visualize what happens. So when I click on collection, you can see that the values change, and that is of course because we are using random data here. You can see also labels for both the revenue and the target series that we visualize on our FNC chart. And you can also see that we are using here a mix of a bar chart and a line chart, and this configuration is actually done. Let's have a look at the implementation of that configuration. I go back to the collection demo here, and then that is here in the presentation options. Here you can see how we configure the series as a bar chart, as a line chart. So you can see that the first series is set to a bar chart, and when I is larger than 0, so that's the second series, then it's defined as a line chart. Let's move to the next part, which is loading data from a CSV file, and let's have a look at the actual implementation. So what is happening here is getting the name or the full qualified path of the CSV file we are going to load. Configure chart is again the same. It's clearing any prior series that might have been added and configuring legend, title, x-axis and y-axis and so on. For a CSV file, we have an FNC chart class, the FNC chart load options class, and this is a class that contains the instructions for loading the data from our CSV file. So one of the important things here is that the Y range is AR enabled 0 based, so auto ranging is enabled, and values or the y-axis should start at value 0. And also an important thing here is the CSV file delimiter, which is set to a comma. Let's have a look at the content of our CSV file. You can see in the first row that it has the label for what each column contains. That is the month in the first column, the revenue in the second column, and the third column contains the profit. And so here we are calling the built-in method for our FNC chart, which is the load from CSV data method. First of all, file name is the parameter, and then the load options, the object that we create here with all the configuration for loading the data from the CSV file. And here is the array of all the columns that we want to visualize as series in the chart. So here, for this particular CSV file, this is column 0, this is column 1, column 2, it is column 1 and 2 that we want to visualize. The next parameter is the x-axis value itself. So that's not the label, but that is in case we would be using an XY chart. But this is of course not used here, so we set it to -1, meaning this value is not to be found in the CSV file. And last but not least, we have 0, and 0 is the column, the index of the column here that contains the x-axis label text. So that can be found in column 0 of our CSV file. And there is not much more than this, apart from here setting the text of the legend, and also setting the type of the charts series, but here in this case for CSV we are also using a bar chart and a line chart, bar chart for the first series and a line chart for the second series. So if we have a look at the result of loading a CSV file, that is what is rendered for the data of the CSV file. Of course, when I reload it, it's always the same data. So not as with the collection where we have random data, it's always the same information. And for JSON, that's not too much different. Let's first have a look at the content of our JSON file. You can see here that it contains an object report, and within that report is our array of data, and that array of data is in the rows value, and under that we have each point in our series. So we have here the x-axis label, we have the revenue value, and we have the expenses value. Let's have a look of how we can map the data in the JSON file to the chart series. So what we have here is, I need to go to load JSON demo, that is here, the code for this JSON import. Here we have again, or we are using again, the load option object to pass it to the load from JSON data method. We specify the file name. Again, we are using the AR common 0 based, so the auto-ranged y-axis starting from 0, and then we have a number of parameters. Let's have a look at what these parameters mean. So the load options object, and then in the third parameter we have the point name that is used. So that means that here this is the object found in JSON where this information is found. And the next parameter is rows, so that means that all the point data is found in the array rows. And then the next parameter is an array, and meaning that it should get the JSON, the value from the JSON, from this JSON object, from the revenue value and the expenses value. And then finally the last parameter is that it should get the x-axis label from the month value in this JSON object. And that's basically it. When we run this demo, this is the information from the JSON file found and rendered as a chart. So let's move to the next topic, another way to load data in our FNC chart, and that is the virtual mode. Virtual mode means that we have somewhere in our application data. We are not loading this at once in our FNC chart. No, the FNC chart will request the data from via an event handler whenever it has to re-render the chart. And so how is this working? First of all, we have this build virtual data. The data is created or generated in the build virtual data method, and for this we are also using two dynamic arrays, one for the x-axis label and one for the y-axis value, and we set a hard-coded length of these dynamic arrays, and we fill these arrays with values. The x-axis value is here week and the index of the week, and the y-axis value is a random generated value. What is happening then is, of course, that the FNC chart will request the data as it is being rendered. And how does it request this data? Two event handlers are being used for that. One is the onGetNumber of points. So that is the FNC chart that requests from our application how much points should I render for a specific series. And the next event handler is the onGetPoint. And this event handler is called for every point in the series. So that will be triggered for the amount of points that we define that are in the series, and that is set with onGetNumber of points. And so when these event handlers are defined, we of course need to add the series to the chart. That is happening here with the series.add, and we set the legend text, and again the y-axis is a zero-based common auto-ranged axis. Let's have a look at the implementation for the onGetChartGetPoint, and we can find this event handler implementation here. So this event handler is triggered with a variable parameter a point, and it is important from here that we set the various properties of this point object, and that means that we set the index along the points in our series. We set also the x value, and then we set the x value text, the label text along the x-axis, and the y value, and that comes of course from our dynamic array that we have first filled. And it is important to note that whenever we call here FNC chart and update, that triggers the rendering of our FNC chart, and at that point, when our chart is configured for virtual mode, it will start requesting the number of points in the series and also the data for each point in the series. So let's run the application. I trigger the virtual mode. We are having a line chart here, and you can see every time I click on virtual, my dynamic array of virtual values is filled again. The end update is called for our FNC chart, and that means that our FNC chart will be re-rendered from the data in that dynamic array. And so that brings us to exporting the data. So we want to export this chart, for example, as a PDF file or as an SVG file. When I click on export, you can see here that a PDF file with this chart is being generated. And when I click on the export to SVG, we can see here in the browser this SVG file is rendered, and of course an SVG file is resolution independent, so it renders in the resolution available for you on your device. Let's have a look at the implementation of these event handlers. Export PDF. What is being used here? This is the class, the FNC Graphics PDF IO. So that's a general FNC class that you not only can be used for the FNC chart, but actually for many FNC controls. So we create this class, and then we simply set the export object to our FNC chart. We specify the file name, the PDF file name, to which file to save the content of the chart as a PDF, and actually with the calling save, the export to PDF is happening. That is all there is to do to generate a PDF file from our FNC chart. And for SVG, what are we doing? For that, we also have a class that takes care of exporting to SVG. Here, this is the TMS FNC Graphics SVG class. We create this class. We render then basically here, we create an exporter and we render the chart to that SVG file within the specified rectangle. And so that is the rectangle that is constrained to these values 960, 540, or when our chart is smaller, it will of course export to a smaller rectangle in the SVG file. So, and actually when this exporting to SVG has successfully completed, then we write all the generated SVG to a file and save it with that as the file. And finally, we also open the file, and that is what actually triggers that the SVG file is opened in the browser, the default viewer on this system for opening SVG files. And so with that, we have run through this sample application that we created for you to demonstrate the data import capabilities and also the export capabilities for the FNC chart. So you can download this demo and configure it yourself, play with it yourself, experiment yourself, and find out all the powerful capabilities of our FNC chart. And as always, if you have any questions while discovering all these capabilities, don't hesitate to contact our support. Our team is ready for you to assist you with any question that might come up. So this was it for this demo regarding the importing of data and also exporting the FNC chart. More FNC chart videos of other content is coming for you. And if you want to be notified when our next FNC chart video is ready, or any other TMS component video, don't forget to like and subscribe, which you can do with the button below here on the video on YouTube. Thanks for watching, thanks for your time, until our next episode on FNC Chart.